One baby was black. One baby was white. Serena Mitchell stared. Her newborn twins. Different colors entirely. Her husband, David, froze. His face turned pale. The accusations came immediately. "This isn't possible," David whispered, his voice sharp with betrayal. He stood rigidly in his Navy business suit, his hands trembling with rage. "You cheated on me. That black baby isn't mine." Serena, exhausted from 20 hours of labor, clutched both infants protectively. Her hospital gown was soaked with sweat, her blonde hair matted against her forehead, but her blue eyes blazed with fierce determination. At 29, she had dreamed of this moment for 3 years of trying to conceive. Never like this. Never with accusations and hatred. "David, I swear to you, I have never been with another man," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Please, there has to be an explanation." But David was already backing toward the door, his expensive leather briefcase clutched like a shield. "I won't be made a fool of. I won't raise another man's bastard." He pointed at the darker-skinned baby, little Marcus, who was sleeping peacefully against his mother's chest. Within hours, David had packed his belongings and moved out of their suburban home in Willowbrook, Tennessee. By the end of the week, divorce papers arrived. Serena found herself alone with newborn twins, no job, and a bank account that David had immediately frozen. Dr. Amanda Foster, the attending physician who had delivered the twins, visited Serena before her discharge. At 42, Dr. Foster wore her silver-streaked hair in a practical ponytail and had the gentle but direct manner of someone who had delivered over 1,000 babies. Her green scrubs were wrinkled from a long shift, but her eyes held genuine concern. "Serena, I need to discuss something important with you," Dr. Foster said, pulling up a chair beside the hospital bed. "The twins' different appearances. There are medical explanations for this. I'd like to run some tests." "What kind of tests?" Serena asked, gently rocking little Lily, the lighter-skinned twin, while Marcus slept in the hospital bassinet. "Genetic testing. DNA analysis. There's a rare phenomenon called heteropaternal superfecundation, where twins can have different fathers. But there are other possibilities too." Dr. Foster paused carefully. "Sometimes there are issues with medical procedures. Mistakes that hospitals don't like to admit." 3 weeks later, the DNA results confirmed what Dr. Foster had suspected but hoped wasn't true. Marcus and Lily were indeed half-siblings, but the truth was far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Dr. Foster called Serena to her office at Willowbrook General Hospital. The office was cluttered with medical journals and family photos, but the atmosphere was heavy with the weight of bad news. "Serena, I need you to sit down," Dr. Foster began, her usually steady voice shaking slightly. "The DNA tests show that while Lily is definitely David's biological daughter, Marcus has a different father. But here's what's crucial. You were artificially inseminated during your fertility treatments here at the hospital." Serena's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there was a mix-up in our fertility lab. Someone made a terrible mistake." Dr. Foster pulled out a thick file. "During your IVF procedure 8 months ago, your eggs were fertilized with sperm from 2 different donors. David's sperm, and sperm from an anonymous donor that was supposed to go to a different patient." The revelation hit Serena like a physical blow. She had undergone fertility treatments after years of trying to conceive naturally. The procedure was supposed to use only David's genetic material. Instead, a lab technician's error had mixed samples, creating twins with different fathers without anyone's knowledge or consent. "Who was the other donor?" Serena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Foster's expression grew even more grave. "That's where this gets complicated. The donor was Marcus Williams, a 26-year-old graduate student who donated sperm to help pay for medical school. He's African American, which explains Marcus's appearance." But the story didn't end there. Dr. Foster continued with information that would change everything. "Serena, there's something else. Marcus Williams. He's not just any donor. He's actually Dr. James Williams' son. Dr. Williams is our head of pediatrics here at the hospital, and he's been following your case closely. He doesn't know yet that his son is Marcus's biological father." Dr. James Williams was a respected 48-year-old pediatrician who had worked at Willowbrook General for 15 years. He was known for his kindness with children and his dedication to his patients. His son Marcus Williams was following in his father's footsteps, studying to become a doctor himself while working part-time at a community clinic in Nashville. The hospital administration was terrified of the lawsuit that would surely follow once the truth came out. They had quietly fired the lab technician responsible for the mix-up and were preparing damage control strategies. But Dr. Foster believed Serena deserved to know the whole truth, even if it meant ending her own career. "There's more," Dr. Foster said softly. "The hospital's insurance company has been investigating this case. They discovered that Marcus Williams specifically requested that if his donation ever resulted in a pregnancy, he wanted to be informed. He wanted the option to be involved in his biological child's life." This revelation turned everything on its head. Unlike most sperm donors who preferred anonymity, Marcus Williams had actually hoped to someday meet any children born from his genetic contribution. He had grown up without knowing his own biological father, and didn't want any child of his to experience that same uncertainty. Dr. Foster arranged a meeting between Serena and Dr. James Williams first. The older man sat in the hospital conference room, his usually composed demeanor shaken by the news about his son's involvement. "Mrs. Mitchell," Dr. Williams began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I want you to know that my son Marcus is a good man. He donated sperm because he wanted to help families who couldn't conceive naturally. He never intended for this kind of confusion to happen." Dr. Williams was a widower who had raised Marcus alone after his wife died in a car accident when Marcus was 12. He wore simple khakis and a polo shirt to the meeting, having come directly from his weekend volunteer work at the Children's Hospital. His hands, whether from years of caring for sick children, trembled slightly as he spoke. "I'd like you to meet him," Dr. Williams continued. "Not because of any legal obligation, but because I think you'd find comfort in knowing what kind of person he is." The meeting with Marcus Williams took place at a neutral location, the children's playground at Riverside Park in downtown Willowbrook. Marcus arrived wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater, his medical textbooks visible in the back seat of his modest Honda Civic. At 26, he had the same gentle eyes as his father, and the same careful way of choosing his words. Serena brought both twins, now 3 months old. Lily gurgled happily in her baby carrier, while Marcus slept peacefully in his car seat. The biological Marcus immediately knelt down to look at his genetic son, his eyes filling with tears. "He's beautiful," Marcus whispered. "They both are." What happened next surprised everyone. Marcus didn't demand visitation rights or try to insert himself into Serena's life. Instead, he offered something much more valuable: support without strings attached. "I want to help," Marcus said simply. "Not as someone trying to take your son away from you, but as someone who wants to make sure he has every opportunity in life. I'm in medical school, so money is tight, but I can offer babysitting, medical knowledge if he ever gets sick, tutoring when he's older, whatever you need." Over the following months, an unusual but beautiful arrangement developed. Marcus would visit once a week, not as a father trying to claim his rights, but as a young man who had accidentally become part of their family and wanted to help however he could. Meanwhile, David had completely cut off contact with Serena and the twins. He refused to pay child support for either child, claiming that since one wasn't his, he had no obligation to either. His lawyers were fighting the divorce settlement, trying to ensure he paid as little as possible. But something unexpected began to happen in the small town of Willowbrook. The story of the hospital mix-up had leaked, and instead of judgment, the community rallied around Serena and her twins. The truth, that this was a medical mistake, not infidelity, changed everything. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, a 67-year-old retired teacher who lived next door to Serena, became like a grandmother to the twins. She would arrive each morning at 7 a.m. sharp, wearing her favorite lavender cardigan and comfortable walking shoes, ready to help with feedings and diaper changes so Serena could return to work. "Honey," Mrs. Patterson would say in her gentle southern drawl, "these babies don't care what color they are or who their daddies are. They just need love, and they've got plenty of that. The real twist came 6 months later, when Dr. Foster made another shocking discovery while reviewing the hospital's fertility records. She called Serena and Marcus Williams to her office with urgent news. "I've been investigating other cases from around the time of your procedure," Dr. Foster began, her hands shaking as she held a stack of files. "I found something that changes everything we thought we knew." She spread out documents on her desk, pointing to dates and patient numbers. The lab technician who made the mix-up wasn't just careless. He was deliberately switching samples. We found evidence of at least 12 other cases where he intentionally created these mix-ups. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Why would someone do that intentionally? Serena asked. "Mental illness, we think." He kept detailed records of what he was doing, like he thought he was conducting some kind of experiment on human genetics and family structures. He wanted to see what would happen when families were forced to confront children who didn't look like them. But there was more. Dr. Foster continued with the most shocking revelation of all. The technician specifically chose Marcus Williams' sperm for your case because he had researched your husband David's background. He knew about David's family history. "What family history?" Serena asked. Dr. Foster pulled out another file. David's grandfather was known to be a racist who had been involved with white supremacist groups in the 1960s. The technician found old newspaper articles about David's family opposing school integration. He wanted to see if David would reject a black child, confirming his suspicions about inherited prejudice. This revelation reframed everything that had happened. David's immediate rejection of Marcus wasn't just about suspected infidelity. It was a manifestation of generational racism that he may not have even been consciously aware of until faced with a black child he believed his wife had conceived with another man. The twisted experiment had worked exactly as the disturbed technician had planned. David had proven himself capable of abandoning his entire family rather than raising a black child, even one he believed his wife had given birth to through medical intervention rather than infidelity. But the technician had miscalculated something crucial: the power of love and community to overcome his divisive intentions. A year after the twins' birth, the story took its final redemptive turn. The hospital settled the lawsuit for a substantial sum, ensuring that both children would have college funds and that Serena would never have to worry about financial security. The disturbed lab technician was prosecuted and sentenced to prison for his crimes. David, faced with the truth about the medical mix-up and his own prejudices, attempted to reconcile with Serena. He showed up at her door one evening, dressed in the same expensive suit that had become his armor against emotional connection. "I know the truth now," David said, standing awkwardly on the front porch. "About the hospital mistake, about the technician. I want to try again. I want my family back." But Serena had grown during their year of separation. She stood in the doorway wearing simple jeans and a sweater, holding little Marcus while Lily played at her feet. At 30, she had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. "David," she said gently but firmly, "the hospital mix-up explains how Marcus came to exist, but it doesn't explain how you could walk away from both of your children. It doesn't explain how you could believe I would cheat on you without even asking for an explanation." Behind Serena, Mrs. Patterson appeared with a tray of cookies for children, her present a reminder of the community of love that had formed around this family. Marcus Williams was in the kitchen, helping Lily with a puzzle while his father, Dr. Williams, discussed pediatric care with Dr. Foster, who had become a close family friend. "This is our family now," Serena continued, gesturing to the warmth and laughter coming from inside the house. "People who chose to love us, support us, and stand by us when things were difficult. People who saw 2 beautiful children and never questioned whether they deserved love based on their appearance." David left that night, and Serena never saw him again. But she didn't feel sad about it. She felt grateful. 2 years later, Serena married Marcus Williams in a small ceremony in Mrs. Patterson's backyard garden. Not because she needed a husband, but because their friendship had grown into a love based on mutual respect, shared values, and a commitment to raising both children together. Dr. James Williams walked Serena down the aisle, having become the father figure she had never had. Mrs. Patterson served as matron of honor, wearing her best dress and crying happy tears. Dr. Foster officiated the ceremony, having been ordained online specifically for the occasion. Marcus and Lily, now toddlers, serve as ring bearers, their giggles providing the soundtrack to a wedding that celebrated not just romantic love, but a love of a community that had chosen to see a medical mistake as an opportunity for grace. In her wedding vows, Serena spoke about the journey that had brought them all together. 3 years ago, I thought family was about genetics and appearances and meeting society's expectations, she said, looking at a gathered crowd of people who had become her chosen family. I learned that real family is about showing up for each other, especially when things are hard. It's about choosing love over fear, inclusion over prejudice, hope over despair. She turned to Marcus Williams, the man who had accidentally become her children's father and had chosen to become so much more. You could have walked away when you learned about the mix-up. Instead, you walked toward us. You chose to see opportunity where others saw problems. You chose to love children who needed love, regardless of how they came into your life. Marcus's response was simple but profound. I learned from my father that being a doctor means healing what's broken, but you taught me that being a family means loving what's different. 5 years later, the Williams family had grown to include 2 more children, and Marcus had graduated from medical school to join his father's pediatric practice. They specialize in helping families navigate complex medical situations, particularly those involving fertility treatments and genetic counseling. Serena had returned to school and become a patient advocate, helping families understand their rights when medical mistakes occurred. She worked closely with hospitals to prevent the kind of deliberate sabotage that had affected her family and others. Little Marcus and Lily, now 7 years old, were thriving in school and had no memory of the drama surrounding their birth. To them, Marcus Williams had always been Daddy, Dr. James Williams had always been Grandpa, and Mrs. Patterson had always been Nana Eleanor. They knew they were twins who looked different from each other, but in their world, that was simply one interesting fact among many. Marcus was good at math and soccer, Lily was good at reading and art, and they both loved helping their father at his medical practice by entertaining younger patients in the waiting room. The story of their unusual beginning had become family legend, but not a source of shame or secrecy. Instead, it was a story about how love can emerge in the most unlikely circumstances, how communities can choose compassion over judgment, and how the greatest kindness often comes from people who have no obligation to care but choose to anyway. On quiet Sunday evenings, the family would gather on their front porch swing, a gift from Mrs. Patterson when they bought their house 2 blocks away from her. They would watch the Tennessee sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors while the children played in the yard, and the adults reflected on the journey that brought them all together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that lab technician hadn't made his twisted mistake? Serena would sometimes ask Marcus. Marcus would consider this, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, listening to Dr. Williams tell stories to younger kids while Mrs. Patterson rocked the baby. I think about it, he would admit. But then I realize that sometimes the worst things people do to hurt us end up creating the most beautiful things in our lives. That technician thought he was conducting an experiment in hatred. Instead, he accidentally conducted an experiment in love. Serena would nod, understanding completely. The cruelty of one disturbed individual had been overwhelmed by the kindness of an entire community. The attempt to divide had instead created unity. The effort to prove that prejudice was inherited had instead proven that love could be chosen. And in that truth, that families are built not by genetics or accidents or even intentions, but by the daily choice to show up for each other with open hearts. They found everything they needed to build a life of purpose, joy, and endless possibilities for spreading that same kind of transformative kindness to others who needed it most. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky and the children reluctantly came inside for baths and bedtime stories, the Williams family knew they had become living proof that the most powerful response to hatred is not anger or revenge, but the simple, revolutionary act of choosing love instead.